as I said, you could argue that. I'm not saying that you'd be right. I'm just saying that you could argue that, and people have argued that.
Have you ever wanted a podcast that did it all? Sports, politics, world events. Well, you have come to the right place, because you are listening to C&C Talks.
Hello, I'm Colin,
And I'm Charlie.
and welcome to the C&C Talks podcast. This is episode 38 of season 2.
And just a reminder, we release episodes every week, and we talk about politics, world events, and sports. It is currently Tuesday, November 28th, 2023, at about 7 p.m. Pacific time.
And coming up on this episode, coming up later, we'll have a whole bunch of football stuff. Big week in football. But we're going to start here in politics with, Charlie, the tragic event that happened at the border right near Niagara Falls, the Rainbow Bridge, where there was a car incident. It seemed to explode, killed 2 people. There were thoughts, at least at first, that it might have been a terrorist attack. There's now no indication that that's what it was. Charlie, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think I understand the immediate concern of this possibly being a terrorist attack, considering the fact that the car was going exceedingly faster than it needed to before crashing. But my question is, do we have any more details on exactly what was happening? Who were the people in the car? Because this whole event just seems very strange to me.
Yeah, no, it does seem strange. I'm not entirely sure the people were in the car. They were American citizens. It was on the U.S. side of the bridge. It was a pretty expensive car too, so I do not believe that there is a motive known at the moment, and it's kind of hard to find one given that it doesn't seem like it was a terrorist attack. It seems like it probably was an accident to some extent. So it's not like there would be a manifesto, and you can't really question dead people. So tragic event. I do, Charlie, though, want to focus on the fact that Fox News was very quick to report that this was a terrorist attack, and this was spread far and wide among the right wing of the United States. And then when it was learned that it was not a terrorist attack and that Fox News' reporting was faulty because, shocker, they don't really have a quality journalism team, there was basically no retraction. And Charlie, it's bad journalism, straight up. And right, the fact that anyone takes them seriously anymore, they shouldn't have been taking them seriously before that, but especially now, it's just beyond me.
Yeah, one of the things that I want to bring up is the fact that this incident really raises some questions about U.S. border safety, considering the fact that this car essentially almost made it through before, of course, it crashed and then exploded. So how does this affect how the U.S. Deals with border security?
I'm not sure how it's actually going to change things that much, because I think you can really just point to it as an isolated incident, Charlie.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. But the question is, will something like this happen again? Was this an isolated incident? It looks like it was, but we of course will see as we learn more about exactly what happened and why this happened. But
Yeah, and I
let's
don't
move on.
necessarily expect to learn that much more information about it, but we will
We
see.
don't. This is a very strange incident indeed. Now let's move on to another person you could very much classify as strange, that being George Santos. What is he up to now?
Yeah. So really, he's not up to much at the moment, except that other people are now up to, it's finally up to the task of dealing with him, because we mentioned that ethics investigation that dropped on him. We discussed that last week. The results were not good for Representative Santos, and now there is really a push that's just gaining steam to expel him from the House. Republicans seem to be in on this. It looks like they're going to give him a couple of days to maybe resign before they actually go for an expulsion vote. It looks like this one will probably actually pass. We don't really know what the position from Republican leadership is on it. We believe that if every single Democrat votes for the measure, as I think is expected, then it would require roughly 75 votes from Republicans to expel him. And so Republican leadership, if they come out against it, then it might be doomed. If they come out for it, it will clearly go through. But I think that there's a real chance that they just don't say anything about it. The Republican House leadership, Speaker Mike Johnson, Majority Leader Steve Scalise, Majority Whip Tom Emmer. I think that there's a good chance that they just don't say anything, let Republican members vote how they want to vote. And I think that if that's the case, there's a good chance that this passes, Charlie.
I can see the thought on that because just of how bad of a look George Santos has on that party. I mean, I don't think they need any help looking bad, but one of the things to consider is would they get rid of him? Because if they do, it only hurts them because they lose a seat that they had in the House, and obviously he's not running in 2024, and even if he does, he would lose by a landslide. So all you do if you're the Republicans is force a guy out who's already going to not get elected again in 2024. So you lose a seat there. So from a strategic perspective, I don't think it's a good idea, and that's why I don't think this will happen.
I mean, I kind of disagree though, because, well, like you're right, he will lose, but I think that Republicans would like to make their odds of winning that seat next time better, and I think that they don't want to be having to say, we are the party of George Santos. That's probably not a winning message, and if they vote to expel him, it's a lot harder for Democrats to stick that message on them. So I think that there is that strategy. I also don't think it matters that much for them to lose the seat for the next year, because it's not like the Republican majority in Congress was accomplishing a whole lot as it was. So it's not like they're going to be accomplishing even less because they weren't accomplishing anything even with him. And there will be a special election there in a few months. We believe, assuming that he's expelled, we believe that they will be able to schedule one before the general election in 2024. We'll see what ends up happening there. And that, again, it's a swing district. Biden won the district in 2020. Santos obviously won the district in 2022 in his House race, so we'll see how they vote. The New York Democratic Party is kind of a mess at the moment, to be completely honest. I also don't think it helps Santos's case that he, on Friday in a Twitter space, he went full on Madison Cawthorn. He started accusing other members of Congress of showing up to votes drunk or hungover, cheating on their spouses. So in some ways, kind of similar to what Madison Cawthorn did when he accused his colleagues of having cocaine orgies. It's a real good way to get your colleagues to flip on you. It cost Cawthorn basically the endorsement of all of the Republicans in his primary race in North Carolina last year. They would not touch him with a 10-foot pole, and he was successfully primaried, and he is now out of a job.
One of the questions I have actually for you: what district is Santos in?
Yeah, so he represents the 3rd District of New York, which is on Long Island, but near New York City. So it's definitely a swing district. Biden, again, he won it in 2020. Santos obviously won it in 2022.
All right, let's move on now. We got some news on Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin, the police officer, of course, who was convicted of killing George Floyd. What has happened to him now?
Ooh, it's not very good news for Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin, he was in jail. He's serving 22 years in prison, and in fact, the Supreme Court just rejected his appeal. So he will indeed be serving 22 years in prison. But he was just stabbed actually in prison by a fellow inmate. He was in critical condition shortly thereafter, taken to a hospital. It looks like he will make a full recovery, Charlie.
And obviously, considering what he did, I'm not surprised that he is probably not very well liked in anywhere that he goes.
Well, sure, but especially prison, like police officers generally aren't going to be treated that well when they go to prison, especially when it's the type of crime that Chauvin committed. You could argue like in the line of duty, but like it was completely uncalled for. He was literally just using his power as a police officer to murder someone, right? So I think completely unsurprising that this happened to him in prison. It will be interesting to see though whether Chauvin and his legal team try to make the argument that prison is not a safe place for him and try to get him under home confinement. It would be interesting to see A, if they try to do that, and B, if it would succeed.
Yeah, and I think if considering that he's been stabbed, I think there could be a case to be made there.
I mean, sure. That's. I think that there is clearly a case to be made. Now, Is that case going to be respected? Who knows? On one hand, police officers generally get treated pretty well by the legal system. On the other hand, he is one of the most disliked figures in America, I would say.
Yes, he is. And one of another person who is not incredibly well liked, but for very different reasons, is Hunter Biden. Not
Yes.
hated by everyone, but hated by some. So he is now the favorite target of Republican investigations to try to take down Joe Biden. Hunter Biden has said that he will testify with the Republicans only if it is public, which the Republicans do not want. They want it to be fully private. Colin, why do you think that is? And exactly what are they questioning him on?
Yeah, wait, you said that the Republicans don't want to make his testimony public?
Yes, they don't.
Why would that be? Because like didn't wouldn't you guys want to embarrass him in front of a camera? I mean, isn't that the entire point of your investigation is to like dig up dirt on him in an attempt to weaken Biden, basically as payback for the investigation, the impeachment hearings into Trump back in 2019? Oh, or is the reason that you don't want to have him in front of the camera because you're worried that he will make you guys look like fools? I mean, the investigation, it's a clown show with no purpose. Like Hunter Biden, sure, he probably committed some crimes. It really looks that way. So I don't care. He's a private citizen. Great, he should be prosecuted. Yeah, of course he should be prosecuted if he committed crimes. So what does that have to do with Congress? Why do they care about this? This is see like Joe Biden is not implicated in the crimes here. This has nothing to do with Congress. The only reason that they're investigating it is because they think it makes Joe Biden look bad.
Yeah, that's the only reason. This is purely political. However, you could also argue that some Republicans are also claiming that the investigations into Donald Trump are purely political.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that. At the same time, he's been indicted by a panel of his peers, of everyday citizens. That's how grand juries work. They're made up of everyday citizens. He's been indicted on 91 counts by everyday citizens, not by a politically elected official, not by anyone appointed by Joe Biden or Merrick Garland, not anyone elected in New York or Georgia. He was indicted by fellow citizens who believed that there was probable cause to indict him. That is
Yeah,
why he was indicted.
as I said, you could argue that. I'm not saying that you'd be right. I'm just saying that you could argue that, and people have argued that.
Sure, no, I get your point. I just don't think it's necessarily fair to legitimize those arguments when
Oh
they're
no,
just two
absolutely not.
completely different situations.
I'm just stating the fact that they do exist. They're out there and they are believed by vastly too many people.
Yes, exactly. And I think that this is also a problem maybe that uh, that the left is kind of running into, is that there is a lot of both sides out there in the media about like people trying to create false equivalencies between these two things, and not just these two things. Like there's a whole variety of different issues. They're just not equivalent, Charlie.
No, absolutely not. All right, let's move on now. We got some news from Israel and the Israel-Hamas war. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so there was actually a ceasefire that was negotiated, and the U.S. and President Biden actually they did have a pretty big hand in not just starting the ceasefire, but then extending it, give a chance for humanitarian aid to flow into Gaza, but also there was a lot of hostages held by Hamas were released back to Israel. There's still a lot that are still held hostage in Gaza, but a lot have also now been released, which is very good news. We'll see how long this ceasefire stays. I guess we'll see if the Biden administration tries to extend it again. We'll see if Israel and Netanyahu, as well as Hamas, actually have an interest in extending this this ceasefire. Charlie.
Yes, it was originally supposed to end on Monday. It was extended through the end of the day. I believe on Thursday, I believe, is when it's supposed to end.
Yeah, I believe so. So, I mean, really just good news, A, that you're getting hostages out, and B, that you're allowing humanitarian aid to reach the people of Gaza who have really been hurting. They've been bearing the brunt of this constant bombing from Israel, much needed humanitarian aid.
Indeed. Now, let's move not necessarily to the politics of international relations, but to the open wild west of AI. Oh dear, this is a mess. Colin, what's gone on with OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT?
Yeah, so we talked about them last week, right, Charlie? That Sam Altman, their CEO, he was fired by the board. Well, Charlie, is now back at the company.
Oh, he's just back? He's just back. He just came back then? How?
None of the employees really liked that the board fired him. So in the end, it was the board that ended up being forced out. Sam Altman is back, and what I would assume is good news for OpenAI, but I mean, it's going to take a long time and a damn good PR firm to heal up this mess.
Yeah, it certainly is. We can see if they were able to get back on track, especially as the AI market develops, and considering just how new this market is.
Yes, exactly.
All right, now let's move on. I think it's about that time for my stat of the week.
And
All
what is
right,
it this week?
here's one for you. For the first time in a very long time, a decent quarterback taken in the 7th round, and that was Brock Purdy last year.
Yep.
Who was drafted in the 7th round along with him? There was two.
Two quarterbacks.
There was two other quarterbacks that was taken along with him.
Two other quarterbacks taken in the 2022 NFL draft besides Brock Purdy.
Yes, in the 7th round. Who were they?
Clarifying question.
Yes.
Any of them currently on an active roster?
That's what I am currently checking right now. I believe one of them I know is, and I'm checking if the other one is.
Are either of them starters?
No, one of them is a backup.
Are you going to say Bailey Zappi?
No, he's one of them. Actually, they're both backups
Yes.
then. Yeah, one of them, yes. Bailey
So I got
Zappi's one
Bailey
of them. Who was
Zappi.
the other one?
I have no clue.
I've just realized actually there's 3 of them.
All right, who else?
All right. Well, the Steelers took I don't actually know how to pronounce that. Chris Oladokun, I think that's how you say his name, from South Dakota State, and then Skylar Thompson is the other one for the Dolphins.
Sure. And Skylar Thompson also got a start in the postseason last year.
He did. He almost beat the Bills.
Yeah, due to Tua Tagovailoa's injury, and I mean,
And
Charlie, like
Teddy Bridgewater
if they
also
had
being
Tua,
knocked out.
if they had Tua, they'd probably have ended up winning that game.
Yeah,
And
I mean, didn't the Ravens have the same problem? Weren't they starting someone who wasn't Lamar?
yeah, they're starting Huntley. And yeah, they also
we
lost with a close one.
speaking of which, we are rapidly moving towards both the college and NFL playoffs. Let's get right into that. And oh geez, college football can just not give us a break of it being on fire.
But Charlie, I've got to say, it's awesome.
It is really awesome.
Let's start with the game of the week, the one that everyone was looking forward to all season, the game between Michigan and Ohio State in Ann Arbor. And Charlie, Ryan Day, what are you doing, my guy? Like, it was a pretty pathetic performance from a coaching standpoint. His team was more talented, but he got outcoached by an assistant coach, and that is rough as Michigan wins that game 30-24.
Yeah, really unfortunate for Ohio State, marching down the field right at the end of the game. Bad throw, gets intercepted with 30 seconds left. Really, what could have been for them? And now certainly if the conference championships all go to the higher seed, which of course some of them won't, considering just how crazy this season has been, I think really unless something crazy happens, Ohio State is out.
Yeah, we'll get to some scenarios in a minute. But Charlie, I did just want to mention one more thing about the game, which is that it will never have stakes as high as the ones it had this year. That will never happen again, because this year both teams were 11-0. Winner goes to the Big Ten championship. Loser does not. Next year, Big Ten, they're getting rid of divisions. if both teams are 11-0 heading into the game next year, they'll rematch in Chicago. That's just, like 1 week later. That's going to take away so much of the stakes. It's the first game. It's just not going to matter that much, and then the stakes in terms of the college football playoff will be way lower too, because it'll be 12 teams. Charlie, the stakes of this game were so high as they've ever been, and as high as they will ever be, and that is what made this game so incredible.
Yeah, and if we're talking about stakes, then I think the other one that we have to highlight was the Apple Cup.
Sure.
Washington trying to get their first undefeated season since 1991 when they won the championship. They got some help, but they got it done.
Yes, they did. They got some help from the refs, who have been pretty keen to help them for much of the season. But Washington did win. It was a lot closer than it should have been, but at the same time, it's a rivalry game. I'm sure that there were some hard feelings on the Wazoo side, given that they are being left behind in what remains of the Pac-12, which is, of course, the Pac-2. But Washington, they became the first team in Pac-12 history since it expanded to 12 teams to win to go 12-0 in the regular season, and it will never happen again because the Pac-12 is, well, at least as we know it, over. Want to talk about some more rivalry games? I think we'll start in the Big Ten. We'll start with that Iowa-Nebraska game, Charlie. Over/under was historically low, 24.5, and you want to take a guess at which way it went?
They got the under again, presumably.
Yep, 13-10, the final score in favor of Iowa. They just keep winning games. They're going to Chicago to face off against Michigan. I don't think that Iowa's going to win that game. In fact, I would be shocked if they were. But what they've done this season is actually pretty impressive. Now, hopefully, they can actually build an offense next year. Michigan State, Charlie, it's been a rough season for them. They lost to Penn State 42-0, just an absolute disaster. Purdue, another disappointing season after making the Big Ten championship last year. But they do end it with a win over Indiana in that big rivalry. Northwestern went back and forth with Illinois in that big rivalry. Ended up being Northwestern who ended Illinois' bid for a bowl game. Minnesota, they were also bidding for a bowl game, but lost to Wisconsin. However, they'll still go to a bowl game as the only 5-7 team to go, as there were not enough teams. And Maryland beat Rutgers, Charlie. Thoughts on any of those games?
Yes, you mentioned the fact that there weren't enough bowl-eligible teams, and because of that, guess who was going bowling? James Madison.
Jacksonville State and James Madison, both going bowling, and what is, well, definitely a big deal for those two programs that are still transitioning to the FBS level. I wanted to talk about one Group of Five game that in particular is Tulane and UTSA. Tulane coming out on top. In that one, they will face off against SMU in the AAC championship. That game could end up deciding who gets a New Year's Six bid from the Group of Five. So Pac-12 rivalries, Charlie, that we didn't mention. Oregon, a big win over Oregon State. They're blowing everyone out, Charlie, right now. They're a dangerous team.
Yeah, they are absolutely dangerous right now. And I
think...
and
then Arizona, that's another big one. They blew expectations out of the water. They win their rivalry game against Arizona State. They end up 9-3 on the year and probably going to a pretty big bowl game, Charlie.
Yes, most likely they are. But let's get to, without further ado, I want to get to what will be the game of the week next week. And that is Washington, Oregon in Las Vegas.
Friday night, the final Pac-12 Friday night game. And, it's the Pac-12 and anything can happen on a Friday.
Oh, yes, it can. It absolutely can. This game's going to be great. Who do you have in this game?
I don't want to say it, but Washington, they went 12-0. They found ways to win. And I know that they're 9-point underdogs, but when you're undefeated in the regular season and you've already won, you've already beaten Oregon, you deserve to be my pick. I will pick Washington to win this game just because they haven't shown me a reason not to yet this year. What about you?
Absolutely. I think the Huskies might pull this off, but what I've said about this game is the Huskies are either going to win by 3 or lose by like 28.
Yeah, no, that is very possible. Some other of the Pac-12 games, Stanford, they got absolutely destroyed by Notre Dame, unsurprisingly. Utah beat Colorado, Coach Prime Charlie ending up 4-8 after a 3-0 start. That is absolutely brutal. And then Cal beating UCLA. Let's move on to the Big 12. Oklahoma, big win over TCU, 69-45. That was a very high-scoring game. Texas beat Texas Tech 57-7. That's just a huge win for them in terms of whether they can make the college football playoff or not. Iowa State, a big upset win over Kansas State. Oklahoma State, it took it to overtime, but they beat BYU, and because of that, they'll go to the Big 12 championship. UCF beat Houston, West Virginia beat Baylor, and Kansas beat Cincinnati. Charlie, any thoughts on those?
Yeah, I mean, just how far TCU has fallen. They made the final. They made the college football final last year.
Yeah,
How
no,
far have
not
they
even
fallen?
they're not even bowl eligible. It's incredible, an absolute disaster for Sonny Dykes' team. And that also, right, Colorado, we thought that it was a big deal when Colorado, the first week of the season, took down TCU. In the end, Colorado didn't win a single game against a bowl-eligible team this year. So maybe a slight improvement over
Well, they
last
didn't
year.
really win that
Maybe.
many games. They didn't really win that many games anyway.
No, and none of them ended up being impressive. It looked like the TCU one was at first, but it's just not anymore. Some ACC and SEC games. Miami, big win over Boston College, to nice way to round out their season. And then SEC, ACC battle. Georgia, unsurprisingly, beat Georgia Tech, although it was a lot closer than it should have been. And then Charlie, Florida State and Florida. Florida State required a pretty big comeback to win this game, which may be unsurprising given that they're down their starting quarterback for the rest of the season, and just a devastating result for Florida State.
Yeah, they are in a dangerous position. If they lose to Louisville, they are absolutely out.
Correct.
Whether
Absolutely out. And
a team like Washington, I could see them losing, but still making it in.
it's possible, but it's would be very difficult. I think a lot of things would have to go right, including Florida State. They would have to lose to Louisville, and I believe Texas would probably have to lose to Oklahoma State as well. So speaking of Louisville, though, Charlie, they lost to Kentucky in the Governor's Cup. That is a bad result for
And that
Louisville.
destroys any long shot that they had of sneaking in.
Exactly. They no longer have
They can get a
any
little
hopes
bit of
whatsoever.
revenge. They can get a little bit of revenge and make things interesting by taking down Florida State next week. By the way, we were commenting on Colorado's wins. Their wins are against
TCU,
hmm?
Nebraska, Colorado State, and Arizona State.
Yeah, just not good.
Not good. Not good at all. Some other of these games, NC State, they beat North Carolina. North Carolina, it was looking good for a while for them this season. They ended absolutely terribly. They will go to a bowl game, possibly a pretty good bowl game, but NC State, they also really came on strong at the end of the season. Clemson, it was bad for a while, but finally managing to rack off a few wins, including this one over South Carolina, who's now not bowl eligible. A really disappointing season for them, coming off that incredible win on the road at Clemson last year to end their season, which was right after that big win over Tennessee. Duke, a big win over Pitt. They'll finish 7-5. Syracuse beat Wake Forest to become bowl eligible. And Virginia Tech did the same thing to become bowl eligible to Virginia, 55-17, the final there. And then in some of these SEC scores, Charlie, in the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss, they beat Mississippi State. Good season for them. They have an outside shot at a New Year's Six bid. Missouri, they took down Arkansas 48-14. It was not a close game at all. LSU, they took down A&M. Good way to end their season. Tennessee took down Vanderbilt. But then, Charlie, another really, really good game this week. Alabama somehow, some way survived in Auburn on the 10-year anniversary of the kick six.
Yeah. I mean, just a great week of college football. Just absolute chaos. Can't wait for championship week and the playoffs. Now to move on to the NFL. Real quickly, actually, just want to go through the NFL real quick. Just some headline stuff we learned. Jaguars escaped against the Texans despite C.J. Stroud putting on another amazing performance. The Cowboys rocked another pretty mediocre team on Thanksgiving. The 49ers are clearly the dominant team in the NFC West, as the Seahawks, their season's really hanging on by a thread as they face Dallas on Thursday. The Bears somehow managed to win on Monday night against Josh Dobbs, and it looks like the Vikings are finally starting to slow down. The Broncos might actually be serious playoff contenders somehow, as they took down the Browns, and they got a scoregami, 29-12. That's pretty cool. And in the night game, Ravens, although it wasn't pretty, took down the Chargers and maintained the number one seed in the NFC, and in the AFC, and finally in a showdown, Philly and Buffalo go to overtime. Buffalo squanders another opportunity. Josh Allen now 0-6 in overtime as Philly sneaks out the win and improves to 10-1.
Yeah, I think Charlie, let's start kind of as we recap these games more closely. Let's start at the beginning of the week. Start with the Lions just putting up another disaster class on Thanksgiving, as they tend to do. I mean, frankly, if you picked the Lions, you probably should have known better because it's the Lions on Thanksgiving. What did you make of the Packers in this game, though? They looked very impressive.
They do, but I mean, the Lions played terribly. Jordan Love will sometimes have a game like this. I don't really think it's anything to be super excited about that. You may notice I don't like Aaron Rodgers that much, and I really don't like the Packers that much. You notice, if you go back to any of our old episodes from last year, I was just dissing them every single week, and they proved me right. Let's see who they have for the rest of the season. This is fun. They have the Chiefs next. Well, that'll be fun. Then they have the Giants and Buccaneers. Well, they'll probably drop one of those for some reason. Then the Panthers. Then the Vikings, and then the Bears. Actually, now that I'm looking at this, the Packers might somehow make the playoffs. No matter what will happen, though, they're probably gonna play the Lions, and they'd get stomped.
Yeah, and I mean with Jordan Love, I mean he had some incredible passes in this game, though. Especially at the beginning of the game, he is, to me at least so far this season, showed enough of a spark, and especially given where the Packers are probably going to end up falling in the draft, that I don't think it's necessarily urgent for them to draft a quarterback. Although it will still, of course, be tempting given just how stacked this quarterback draft class is, Charlie.
Oh, absolutely. But real quick, just last thing on the Packers, their wins this season have not been impressive. They took down the
No.
Saints, on the last second after the Saints defense completely imploded. They
Yep.
took down. They somehow lost to the Raiders. They took down the Rams when they had the most injuries that they had this entire season. They beat the hapless Chargers and took down the Lions.
Yeah, so it's fine.
Oh, and as well as
I'm not
beating the
too
Bears
impressed.
in Week 1.
Yeah. I'm not too impressed. It's fine. Yeah, Charlie, you mentioned the Cowboys, a 45-10 whooping over the Commanders on Thanksgiving. This is what the Cowboys do.
Yeah,
And
sorry.
I don't.
Let me just take over for a second.
Past divisional weekend.
Can all of you, all of the analysts out there that I've seen, stop saying that Prescott should win MVP until he can beat a team with a winning record and not explode whenever he reaches the playoffs. I don't want to hear it. I would put C.J. Stroud over Dak Prescott right now. I understand.
Yep.
I understand that he has, I think, 12 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in his last 6 games. That's pretty cool. That's decent. In those last 6 games, though, they've played the Panthers, the Giants. Admittedly, they played the Eagles, the Rams, the Chargers, and the 49ers. And in 2 of they lost to the Cowboys and got obliterated by the Eagles. I mean, let's look at their wins this season. I said this last week or 2 weeks ago. They have wins against the Giants, the Jets, the Patriots, the Cowboys, the Rams, and the Giants again, the Panthers, and the Commanders. They're not that good of a team, and they have a gauntlet coming up. They have the Eagles again, they have the Seahawks, they have the Dolphins, the Lions, and the Bills. Now I understand that
It's tough.
Buffalo is also struggling, and I want to get to them next. Does this
Yeah.
loss to Philly end their season?
What do you mean by end their season? Like, as in
Or
they're not going to the
is there
playoffs?
are they out of the playoffs? Essentially, is what I'm asking.
No, they're not out of the playoffs. They're out of the division race, I think I could argue, but I don't think that they're out of the playoffs, at least not yet, though I am really concerned by Josh Allen's record in overtime. It's been sad. Did want to get to one more thing on the Cowboys, though, like you mentioned about the Prescott MVP hype. I don't want to hear any Cowboys Super Bowl hype until they can actually show that they can win a divisional round playoff game. Again, not even like make it to the Super Bowl. Just until they can even win a divisional round playoff game, I don't want to hear it.
There's
This
exactly
is who they are.
There's exactly one player on that team that deserves to win anything, and that's Gerard Bland.
Yes, an incredible achievement for him. 5 pick sixes in one season. That is,
And we're not even
I
done with
mean,
the
it's just
season
about
yet.
unheard of. Yeah, no, he's got what, 7 more games to play, at least
does.
8 more games to play.
How much
Yeah,
more
8
can he
more games
rack
to
up?
play. Yeah, and we'll see. He'll be playing the Seahawks on Thursday Night Football. And Charlie, speaking of the Seahawks, oof, it's been brutal the last couple of weeks. Big loss to the 49ers at home in prime time on Thanksgiving. It's rough.
Yeah, I mean, we carried a lot going into that game, and they just got walloped. And I mean, I am surprised that the final score was as close as it was. The Seahawks' only touchdown coming off a Quandre Diggs pick six. And
Yeah, no offensive touchdowns since the
this
first
comes
quarter of
1
that
week
Rams
after
game.
dropping a heartbreaker in LA.
Yeah.
And the week before that, I think that was Seattle's bye week, if I'm not wrong. Yes, it was.
Their bye week was earlier, but
Who did they play in week 10 then? Oh yeah, they snuck by Washington, and the week before that they got crushed by Baltimore.
Exactly. It's been a very rough stretch.
They've
got a gauntlet schedule still.
The rebuild is going backwards.
They might miss the playoffs. And on the flip side of that, Charlie, the Broncos, they might make them an incredible win over the Cleveland Browns, 29-12. Russ is kind of cooking, I got to admit.
He is. I mean, he has been cooking for most of the season. The problem early in the season was that the defense was just dead.
Yeah.
So, looking at the Broncos, they have a tough game this week in Houston. Yeah. And then they have the Chargers and the Lions, which is a bit tough. But then they have an easy last 3 games with the Patriots, Chargers, and Raiders.
Yep.
This team could very much make the playoffs. The only problem that I see for them is the AFC is clogged up for those final few spots. If we look at this, the Ravens, Chiefs, Jaguars, and the Ravens, Chiefs, and Dolphins, I don't think really anyone can threaten them. Jacksonville might have a little bit of trouble with Houston if they decide to drop a couple games at the end of the year. But then you have the 7-3 Steelers, the 7-4 Steelers, 7-4 Browns, 6-5 Colts, 6-5 Texans, 6-5 Broncos, 6-6 Bills, 5-6 Bengals.
Yep.
Then after that, it falls off a little bit. We have the Raiders, Chargers, Titans. But I think one of the dark horses here, if they can sneak out a couple of wins before late December, could the Jets do something really funny here?
Charlie, the Jets already did something really funny, and it was throwing a Hail Mary pick six.
Okay, that's fair.
They're in a bad spot right now.
Let's look. Before we say anything, let's see who they have. They have the Falcons next week, and the Texans and Dolphins. Apparently, a lot of people have been circling that Christmas Eve game against the Commanders as a possible return to Aaron Rodgers, and he'll be needed the next week against the Browns.
Yeah, Charlie, the Jets probably have to win out to make the playoffs.
Presumably, and they have the Texans in 2 weeks. That's going to be a problem.
They're not winning out. Let's be clear on that. It's not happening. I know. I absolutely believe that. I
absolutely believe that it won't. But it will be helpful to get some playing time with Aaron Rodgers for the Jets, as they possibly. Do you think it's possible that they go and draft a quarterback in this year's draft?
I find it unlikely. I will say, I also don't think it's a good idea for the Jets to play Aaron Rodgers. You're just asking for him to get injured again. I mean, even if he says he's ready, I mean, he'd be making a historically quick comeback. That's the type of thing that could lead to an injury, and there would be no reason for doing so.
So my question then becomes, what are the reasons for keeping Aaron Rodgers then?
Next season.
He's very injured.
Next
He's trying to
year.
come back. You can already draft a pretty good guy in the draft, most likely, with where you are as New York. So was this whole Aaron Rodgers thing an absolute disaster for New York?
I mean, it clearly wasn't year one. They're probably going to stay with him next year. Why wouldn't they? And if he gets injured again, then obviously it's a disaster for them. But I mean, we'll see what he can do next year. I mean, the team surrounding him, especially the defense, it's pretty good.
It is. The Jets do have a pretty good defense, and of course they need it, considering how dysfunctional their offense has been. First with Zach Wilson, and now with Tim Boyle. Anyway, enough about the games this week. Let's get to our little fantasy standings. How's that going for you?
For me, it's going very, very badly. You are up, I believe,
the standings
6
right
points. I believe you're up 6 points, though I do not have final calculations out yet. But it's not a good look. Entering the week, you were up 4 points, and it got even worse for me this week. But I still think I have a better chance at having one of my teams win the Super Bowl. So that's 3 points. That's not enough. But say that we get an Eagles-Chiefs rematch in the Super Bowl. It's 2 points for me for the Eagles getting there, 2 points for the Chiefs getting there, and then 3 points to whoever wins. That's 7 points right there. So there's a lot of season remaining, and anything can happen.
The key thing for me, considering the teams that I have, is I do need a rather going in to the playoffs.
Yeah. You do need. You probably need a lead going into the playoffs. I think you might have more playoff teams, but I don't think you're going to have necessarily the playoff teams with the best odds of actually winning.
But considering what has gone on this season, I could equally see a team like somehow the Colts sneak in and then win the Super Bowl somehow.
Sure. I mean, well, I doubt it'll be the Colts, but like something weird.
I'm using them as an example.
Yeah, the whole season has been weird. You are very right about that, Charlie. Let's move on to Feast Week in college basketball. A whole ton of tournaments going on around college basketball. Myrtle Beach Invitational, Charleston Classic, Maui Invitational, Bahamas Championship. Lots of tournaments. Do want to highlight though specifically the Maui Invitational, Charlie, because this was maybe the most loaded field we've ever seen at this event. I mean, it was the field was incredible. Purdue ended up winning the whole thing with a win over Marquette in the finals. But then we also had Gonzaga there, UCLA there, Syracuse, Tennessee, Kansas. The semifinals were Tennessee, Purdue, and Kansas, Marquette. That's better than we get in most Final Fours, Charlie.
It really is.
Yeah, and I think now, Charlie, let's move on to the MLS playoffs. Charlie, rough week for the Sounders. They got eliminated to LAFC once again. What do you think about that?
I don't watch soccer at all. What happened?
They lost. There's not much else to it.
Oh, okay,
Sounders
cool. Let's move
lost. On. They looked bad. Houston also advancing to the semifinals with the win over Sporting Kansas City. Orlando City SC lost to Columbus. And FC Cincinnati a win over Philadelphia. So the semifinals are set: Columbus, Cincinnati in an Ohio battle, and then LAFC and Houston in the Western Conference for a spot in the MLS Cup.
All right, let's wrap things up with Formula One and the MLB. Let's get to the MLB first. We're a few weeks in the off season, and nothing is happening.
Well, I wouldn't say nothing, but not much yet.
All right, what do we have so far of the few moves that have happened?
Yeah. So we mentioned Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson going to the Cardinals last week. Sonny Gray joins them. So I guess the Cardinals have completed their rotation of mid. Their most competent lineups could probably beat the Cardinals' rotation.
Okay.
It's
fine.
I
understand that, but I mean, they're in one of the central divisions. They will be fine.
Yeah, that's true. They won't exactly be facing a lot of competent lineups in that division. The other big move is the Mariners, for whatever reason, Charlie, They traded Eugenio Suarez to the Diamondbacks. What are your thoughts on that big trade?
I don't understand it at all.
I think it's just a salary dump, and that disturbs me.
It is a salary dump, but for what reason?
Don't ask me. I've got no answers.
No, I mean, if you want more
John
answers on that,
Stanton wanting to fill his pockets.
if you want more answers and our thoughts on the Mariners, go check out the interview with Ty Dane Gonzalez we did last week, and go check out the various podcasts that he is on as well.
Yeah, there you go. Good answer. And how about you end with Formula One?
All right, I didn't watch this Grand Prix. Verstappen won. That's pretty much it. The season's over.
And you are very happy about that.
I'm very happy. Hopefully, the Red Bull 20, or the 20th edition of that car, is not as absolutely overpowered as the one this year. And hopefully, we can have a couple of teams actually challenge them this year. But we did actually have a couple of storylines. Mercedes did secure P2 in the championship away from Ferrari. Ferrari, of course, failing as they usually do. And Perez locked up P2 in the championship last week, so it does appear that he will stay at Red Bull for next season. However, his contract expires at the end of next season, as does Charles Leclerc's and Carlos Sainz. This will be a big year for contracts in Formula One. Hopefully, we'll get some exciting things as we head into next season, as we wait for Abu Dhabi, as we wait for Bahrain. I'm sorry, at the beginning of at the end of February.
Yeah, do really quickly before we go here. Just want to say, as of this taping, in the Eastern Conference of the NBA, the seeds have been locked in for the knockout rounds. It'll be the Bucks and the Knicks and the Pacers and the Celtics, Charlie. Somewhat of a surprise that the Pacers managed to sneak in there. As of this taping, we don't quite know what the Western Conference seeds are. What are your thoughts, though?
I have really not been watching any of the in-season tournament. I don't really understand exactly why they've done the in-season tournament. It seems rather confusing to me, but congratulations to the teams that have gotten to the knockout stage. What does the winner of this tournament get?
They get the NBA Cup and some prize money.
So not much, in other words.
I mean, you could say that, but then at the same time, like, isn't that just what you get for winning the NBA Finals? Is a trophy?
Yes, but I don't understand why they have this in the middle of the season. What's the point?
Just to drive viewership.
It's money. Okay. And what else is new?
Yeah, what else is new? I think that's going to do it for this episode of C&C Talks. So make sure you subscribe. Episodes every week, wherever you listen to podcasts. Visit our website, cctalks.com. We'll learn everything you need to know about the show. And call us with your questions at 360-389-2630. Again, that's 360-389-2630. And follow us on Twitter at CC Talks Podcast, and follow Charlie at CC Talks Charlie. And join our Discord server, cctalks.com/Discord. All of this information will be in the description below. For our producer Morris, production designer Zack, sound designer Drake, I'm Colin.
And I'm Charlie. We'll see you next week.